In her current position as Senior Benefits Specialist at Disability Financial Assistance Corporation, she combines her experience with the vulnerable population and her legal experience to provide a comprehensive service to her clients. And so I give you Hindy Schecter. Welcome, Cindy. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all, whoever I could see, whoever I can't see. Truly a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I will put on a PowerPoint, so hopefully that'll come on quickly. Okay. I actually was told to start a presentation with a joke, but I have a better one. So I said, so this was the joke that I chose when I prepared this PowerPoint. You said to start my presentation with a joke, so I sold them a paycheck. But I have a much nicer one, because tonight when I was reading a book to my granddaughter on a video call, I said to her that I can only read one story because I am giving a speech tonight. I didn't know how to explain to her what the speech was in terms of over the computer. You had to see the face she gave me. You're giving a speech? She couldn't believe it. So that was my entertainment for you. Okay, so let's start with our presentation. So first things first, I do work for a company, and I want to be very clear. Our service is to help people access government benefits. We charge money for this. We are not a nonprofit. I am thrilled to share this information with you, and I'm thrilled for any of my clients that are able to, or potential clients, I should say, for any of you that are able to access these benefits on your own without the use of a company. There are about 20 companies like ours in Canada. We are certainly not the first. We are certainly not the only ones. We've been around for about 15 years. We are one of the only companies that operates out of Quebec, meaning French and English, even though we do operate in the entire Canada. But as always, and I will say it 100 times when I speak to a potential client, you can do this on your own. Now, I'm a mother, and I would never, I'm a parent, I should say, mother or father, and I would never want to do anything tax related by myself. I only know about this because I work here. So I fully respect any parent who calls me and says, please take care of this for me. I can't do this myself. But I would not want anybody to think that you cannot do this yourself. You can, there is no legal requirement to use a company. I hopefully give you a good service, and I hopefully provide you a lot of benefit for our fee. But that is a very important disclaimer for me and for anyone in our company, that you do know you could do this on your own. So I'm basically giving you our handbook, our information, and I hope that it does help you, and hopefully you can apply on your own and be successful and claim all the amounts due to you and be successful. But if not, we're here. Let's put that aside. Okay, so we'll start with the title of not the title, but the brief little summary about this is that there's not much out there. When people call me and I tell them,
Indeed.
I'm sorry?
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry, Hindy. I'm not sure if you think your presentation is showing. Did you want it showing at this point?
I do. It's not showing?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so let's try again. Sorry, everybody.
No problem.
Am I on though?
You're here.
Oh,
Just
I see. Yeah, I see that it's not showing. Here we are. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Am I showing now? There we are. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, right? Okay. So number one, there is not a lot out there. And I have parents who call me and they're quite disappointed, and that is the truth. The truth is there isn't a lot out there. The idea is that, the public schools are mandated to provide services. We all know that our child might be in school for a couple of hours a day, but the rest of the day they're at home. The schools aren't always able to provide everything our children need. So it is limited what you can get, but you should definitely get it if you can. First, we'll talk about what's called the disability tax credit. which includes the child disability benefit. This is a program of the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency. Okay. The disability tax credit we'll discuss the financials first, then we'll discuss the criteria for applying. The disability tax credit is a tax credit. It's non-refundable. Non-refundable means that when you file your taxes in April, do you get money back from the government or do you owe money? So if you owe money, non-refundable means that you owe a little less. If you get money back, you might not be able to get more. That's non-refundable. It's a non-refundable amount. So for example, when you file your tax credit, you give your accountant all your dental receipts, all your extra medical receipts, the fact that you put in energy efficient windows, and all those lower your tax burden. The fact that you have a child with special needs would also lower your tax burden. But after a while, it's maxed out. There's nothing left. Either your income is not high enough or you've used it all with your other expenses. So this would not be useful. But as we will see in the next section, if your income is not at the level where you can use this, most likely you benefit from the child disability benefit, which is the monthly amount. Okay? It's approximately $1,800 to $2,300 a year, plus a possibility of childcare amounts. I cannot give an exact number for this amount because it's based on income and everybody's income is different. And even if I gave you that whole income chart with the amount of children you have and how much money you made, I still wouldn't know how many dental receipts you're putting in. So this is the general amount. As you can see, and this is when I tell this to parents, I get a lot of, that's it. That's it. It's not a lot of money. It's better that you could use it than not use it at all, right? If you're saving $2,300 a year, that's about 1 or 2 sessions of therapy a month. That's good. That's good. That's a good thing. It does go retroactive up to 10 years. So, and we'll see some examples about that. So for example, let's say, you just found out about this tonight and your child's 15 years old, but you've known that they've had ADHD and a couple of learning disabilities and they're struggling since, I don't know, let's say age 7. You could go back all those years and claim those amounts. So it is retroactive up to 10 years. 10 years is a tax bar. It's the Fairness Act. It's not a matter of age or anything like that. It's just, that's a tax regulation. It could be transferred to a supporting relative, meaning that if I'm a child, I'm not paying taxes, my parents could claim it for me. If I'm a 22-year-old with disabilities, my parents can also claim it for me. So it could be transferred to a supporting relative. Okay. The child monthly supplements, the child disability benefit. Now, we said before that if your income is at a certain level, you're able to claim the tax credit. If your income is at this level, or your income is at a high level, but you have a bunch of children, so your income is not actually practically so high anymore, you can claim, instead of claiming the tax credit, you would receive this money as a disability benefit. So the amount is pretty similar that you receive. What changes is the delivery system. Are you getting it as a tax credit? Are you getting it as a monthly benefit? Are you getting it as a combination of both? You can get a smaller amount of the monthly benefit, but not be able to claim the full tax credit. But in the end, the amount is basically the same. So these first 2 slides, an explanation about money, which we're doing first because for me at least, it's the stuff I don't like, the number stuff, I don't like at all. So we'll get over with that when we're fresh and bright and alive. My point is that for these 2, it's one or the other, but you will be able to claim something. You will walk out the door with some amount in your pocket based on this application. How you'll get it, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you over the phone. As a company, we're only able to tell a client once we have access to their tax documents. So even if you would call me tomorrow and ask me, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But I could tell you the average is about $3,000 a year. That I could tell you. So the child monthly supplement, the child disability benefit, which comes on the 20th of the month, the same time as your regular child monthly benefit. It's up to $3,321.96 this year. It's about $276 a month. The amount goes up every year. And I should have clarified with the tax credit on the first slide, it's the same thing, right? The amounts go up a little bit every year. It's also retroactive for up to 10 years. So again, our example before about your 15-year-old son that you never applied for, it would be the same idea. And again, my point about the delivery system, the amount is basically the same. How it's going to get delivered to your door, what wrapping paper it will be wrapped with, that depends on your income and family situation, and I couldn't tell you. Let's look at an example here, okay? Dylan is a 9, and we'll discuss the criteria afterwards. In other words, the disability criteria afterwards, but we're looking now more at the financials, like I said, when I'm fresh, when we're all fresh. Dylan is a 9-year-old boy diagnosed with strong learning disabilities and ADHD in 2018. He filed this application for the disability tax credit. He is approved from 2018 through 2030. Most of the time, the government will not approve an application for learning disabilities and ADHD for life. Now, we all know that it doesn't go away. The idea is that we all hope, and that's what the government's mindset is, that a person will learn the skills to cope with it, which is what we all hope for. So, whereas let's say if there's somebody who is born paralyzed and can't walk, most likely that's not going to change, and that person might be approved indefinitely for life because it's not based on the disability, it's based on the effects, and we'll discuss that later, but I just wanted to clarify that little piece there. So he is approved from 2018 through the end of 2030. His family income is about $25,000. He has 3 siblings, okay? So that is not a lot of income for a family of 3 siblings. I'm not saying they're not managing, I'm not judging their income level, I'm just saying according to the government calculations. He will get a retroactive child disability benefit amount for this amount, $20,588 from 2018 until today, until the day he is approved. And then they will receive the monthly benefit amounts until Dylan turns 18, okay? Now, he's going to turn 18 only after 2030. But let's say in 2030 they apply again and he's over 18. At 18, maybe the family income changed. Maybe because there are many kids over 18, the $25,000 goes much further. It might be able to be claimed as a tax credit. Okay, but at this point, the disability tax credit cannot be claimed by the parents since there are no taxes owing. This is not a large income. They most likely don't owe anything more than that. So the maximum child disability benefit is granted. Total value retroactive is $20,000. Future payments for the next 4 years, or 2025 now, he'd be getting it till 2030, the next 5 years, sorry, would be about $16,200. Of course, it's approximate because I don't know how much the government will increase it every year. And the government does increase it by a couple of dollars every year based on inflation or whatever other matrix they consider, I don't know. So this is an example. So if you're applying with your son who's 9, son or daughter, with your child who's 9 years old, right, and they're approved from 2018, you'd get a retroactive amount, and then you'd get a monthly amount following until the end of 2030.
Excuse
Let's
me.
look at it. Yes.
My apologies. We just had a couple of questions come in related to the previous slide.
Yes.
If I could just ask them, and then if
Sure.
who asked these, if it's not clear, please pipe in.
Yes.
So one is asking, is this by family gross or can be claimed by the lower revenue parent?
No, it's family based.
Okay.
But again, if the income is high, you'll claim this as a tax credit. So let's change this and say that the family income is $455,000, right? So they will not be getting any CDB. We will just delete that, right?
Mm.
Because that's according to the government, that's a high income, but they'll be able to claim the maximum tax credits. What I said here, they will be able to claim it. And in the end, it's basically the same. The amount comes out to basically the same. That's what I said about a delivery system. Low income, it's delivered as a monthly benefit. My hands are not there. I'm not really sure what they're showing, right? Low income, it's being delivered as a monthly benefit. High income, it's delivered as a tax credit, but the amount is the same. So it's not, I mean, an income bar, I don't know an income bar. I don't know how high of an income you have to have not to be able to claim anything. The only issues we've ever seen, if somebody is being paid only through dividends, there might be an issue, but we've never had a case where somebody was able to claim nothing. So then again, I don't know that I've had any clients who were multi-billionaires. So
Okay.
I understand the question. It is not a concern.
Okay.
It shouldn't be an issue. There always will be something to collect.
Okay. And is there a low income threshold by any
No.
chance? That's another question. Okay.
No.
Okay. And if the one last one here, if the child
Numbers.
shared custody, does it get split in two?
Yes. If there's shared custody, and you know what? I did not bring that up, so I'm so glad you brought up that question. Let me break in with that right now. If there's shared custody, again, the monthly benefit, if that's what the income grants you, if that's the delivery system you get granted, it's split the same way your monthly benefit is split. So if shared custody is 70-30, the mother is getting 30% of the monthly benefit, the dad is getting 70%, the monthly benefit will be split the same way. The tax credit is a little different because usually one parent can only claim the tax credit, but this is where often in a divorce agreement, there will be an agreement as to who can claim it. And usually it would be the higher income parent just because let it be fully claimed and then divided afterwards. So the monthly benefit is divided automatically according to custody. So glad you asked this question because I did not put it in. So thank you to whoever asked that. The monthly benefit is divided automatically according to custody. The tax credit amount is not divided. It should be in the divorce agreement, or the parents, I would advise, should agree that the higher income parent should claim it. In this way, it could be more fully claimed and then divided afterwards. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Hindy.
I'll add it for the next one.
Yeah, there's two more that have popped
Sure.
in.
Please.
Okay. What happens with split households? I'm not sure.
It's the same thing. It goes according to your custody arrangement that's set out by the court in your custody agreement. So if it's 70-30, if it's 60-40, if it's 80-20, the monthly benefit is divided the same way. Or like I said about the tax credit, the higher income parent, I suggest, should claim it, but it should be in the divorce agreement.
Okay, thanks. And one last one here. What if the child is already 18? Can we still go retroactive?
Yes. 18 does not bar eligibility. So I could be eligible at 35. What 18 bars is the monthly benefit payment because that's only for a child. So if let's say I have a child who's 22, okay, I have a child who's 22. And she's approved since age 16. From 18 to 22, I would only be able to claim the tax credit, but from 16 to 18, I can also claim the child benefit. Again, it's based on income, so you have to have income to claim the tax credit, but putting that aside, that's how it works. You can go back 10 years no matter what age, as long as there is 10 years. If the child's 7 years old, there's no 10 years, right? But you can go back up to 10 years. 18 years old, all that changes at 18 is that a child can't get the monthly benefit, but I could still be eligible for something as long as my income or my family's income allows it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, Emily was diagnosed in 2020. She's 14 years old. Her family income is approximately, sorry about that little typo, $100,000. So that's much higher than our previous slide. So right away, we can assume there'll be some tax credits amount. She was approved from 2020 through the end of 2029. The CDB from 2020, so for 4 years, she gets $10,406.28 a month, and they will receive $248 a month until Emily turns 18. Now, so 248 is less than the maximum amount because their income is higher, so they get less monthly benefit. I put some stars here because when I say 248 a month until she turns 18, what if next year the family income is 150,000? What if next year the family income is 20,000? So obviously I can't project to the future, but if we're assuming things stay reasonably the same, that's what we're looking at. But obviously this number cannot be 100% accurate. However, the parent can also claim the tax credit. So the tax credit that the parent can claim for that 4 years, the amount is approximately $7,047.32. Okay, so that's where you see that based on the income level, this family is able to get the delivery system in both places, but in the end, the total amount is basically the same. Okay,
Sorry,
Olivia, yes, sure.
my apologies. Just to follow up about the 18-year-old question from before. So you can't go retroactive for the monthly payments. They would have been lost even if the child was eligible since they're 15. Do you want me to read
Yes,
it?
if it's over the 10-year bar. So 15, right? 15, it's 20. I forgot how old that. In the example, I forgot how old the child is.
8.
The point is that you can go back up to 10 years. So if the child's 25, you can only go back to age 16, and you lose anything before that, even if the child would have been accepted before.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say chop, get in your applications. Don't lose out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I have a parent call me and the child is 22, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, and to me, it's such a difficult situation. And the child at 22 is finally properly diagnosed with, say, a mild form of autism and ADHD. So, the kid in school who, might have been just didn't quite make any of the testing, and nobody really got the picture about this child. And, the parents had to do something better, and the school should have done better, and everybody laying blame everywhere. And finally at 22, the kid gets a proper diagnosis and finally feels like, yes, that's who I am. This is my differences, and I'm happily to embrace them, and I will live a full life with them. You can only go back to age 12, even though at age 8 and 9, the kid was already struggling. You can't go back more than 10 years.
Okay, and thank you, that's great. And does this retroactive tax credit, do you have to go back and refile all the years previous?
So you have to file adjustments, tax adjustments, which again, as a regular human being not working for this company, I would have no idea what to do. A part of our service as a company is that we do all that for you, or your accountant can do it for you. You can contact the CRA. If you hit on a good agent, the agent might be able to help you. But yes, you don't have to refile your entire taxes. And in fact, I would caution people to be careful, because you wouldn't want the government to reopen all your taxes if you're only asking for one line to be adjusted. It's an unnecessary labor-intensive work that will take years they'll take 2 years to do it. So I would be cautious about that. You have to file a tax adjustment. There's a T1 adjustment form online, or you can do it automatically online. Your accountant can do it, or that's what we do.
Thanks, Cindy.
Sure. Okay, so finally we have an example with an older person, which just from the audience that I have, I don't know if so applicable, but I do want to share it. So Olivia's caring for her aging mother, who's been suffering with arthritis since 2013, and her mother lives with her. So since 2013, right away, we can hear 2025, she's going to lose out for a few years, right? Olivia will only receive the DTC. So her mother is the one who will file the application. Well, she can do it for her, but I'm saying her mother is the one who will be considered disabled. But Olivia will claim the amount because Olivia is caring for her mother. Olivia will only receive the DTC, the disability tax credit, because this is an adult, not a child. So if Olivia's income is where she would have only been able to receive the child disability benefit, she will not be able to claim the tax credit for her mother. And to be frankly honest, there's no point in applying. There might not be a point in applying, let's put it that way. But if Olivia's income is at the level where she could claim the tax credit, she should apply for her mother and she should claim it. The DTC will be collected from 2016, so you can only go, since you can only go back 10 years. The value in this case is $11,725.95. If you notice, and I wouldn't have, but if you notice, the amount for the adult is less than for a child with a tax credit, because a child gets more of a tax credit than an adult. Future amounts, Olivia will claim the DTC yearly, approximately $1,400. Again, I have to be approximate because I don't know that it increases every year, and it's based on Olivia's income. So I don't know what Olivia's income will be. But in theory, that's approximately what it would be. Okay. Do we want to see if there's any other money tax related questions before we go on to the disability section?
Sure, yes. So we have one here that's asked,
Sure.
you'd mentioned the adjustment form. Could you say the name of that form once more?
Sure. There's something called the T1 adjustment form.
Okay.
Okay.
One.
Or if you have access to your online CRA account, you could do it year by year automatically, or your accountant can do it, or you can call the CRA and see if somebody can help you. I know we'll talk about Quebec later. Quebec is super helpful over the phone. CRA, you have to land on a good agent. I don't want to be hesitant, right? You know, for me, this is a balance between selling my service, which is not my job here tonight, and cautioning you to be careful. So I would advise you to consult your accountant before you call the CRA with the adjustments, to do the adjustments. But you can call them. I'm not telling you not to. I just, Quebec, I would have much more confidence in. They seem to know that better. Okay.
Okay. And one
Yeah,
other one
sure.
here. What if you're a dual citizen, Canadian and American? Do you have to file US tax adjustments as well? Would you have any idea?
No, this is a Canadian tax benefit. This is not a US tax benefit. This has
Okay.
nothing to do with the US. Yeah. No. I don't see how it would. If you're receiving monthly benefit amounts, you 100% would be able to receive benefit from this application. If you're not receiving monthly benefit, that's a good test. If you're not receiving monthly benefits amounts because your income is too high, as long as you're filing a tax return in Canada, there shouldn't be an issue. You have to reside in Canada. You have to have a doctor in Canada. We'll discuss that. But for tax purposes, and there are many people who work in two places, that's fine. I don't see how it should affect your US taxes.
Hindy, we have one more
Sure.
that's come in. Would you like it now?
Sure, yes.
Okay. So to apply for DTC and
Yes.
CDB, my daughter has a private psychological diagnosis of ADHD, but no autism, etc. What paperwork is necessary to apply for these credits?
Okay, so we're going to get to that now. That's a great segue. Thanks for that question. Wonderful. Perfect. Okay, so what is the CRA looking for? What is a disability? So the application itself, and I had mentioned that I would leave links at the end, so I'll have them available, and if you can give them to everybody tomorrow. The application, it's available on the CRA website. It's called the Disability Tax Credit. And you'll see very clearly, there's no drop-down list of disabilities. If you look at our website, there's a drop-down list of disabilities. There is none like that here. It's the effects of the disability. So of course you have to have a diagnosis because, you know, when my kid was 4 and I was ripping my hair out, I would have said, please help me, my kid's making me nuts. You know, I'm struggling, right? A lot of parents, I'm assuming, can relate to that. But so there needs to be a specific diagnosis. But after there's a diagnosis, it's exactly that. Please help me, I'm ripping my hair out, I cannot manage. That's basically the criteria. Okay, so the parent who asks about the ADHD and not autism matter. The parent who will say my child only has learning disabilities, it doesn't matter. The criteria is that, you know, I have this slide up here, but let me just speak it out. The criteria is that the child is markedly restricted at home or with friends. Okay, so I'm sorry, at home and or with friends. Sorry about that. So it has to be that the child is struggling to manage basic daily functions at home, and I'm saying and or because it can't only be or, it has to be and or, okay? And or with friends. Now, if you look at the application, there's a whole bunch of criteria. There's walking. So somebody who is paralyzed, someone who has terrible neuropathy, somebody who has, you know, a limb amputation, they're going to have a problem walking. Okay. Dressing, someone who has arthritis. Okay. Someone who has extreme, maybe extreme sensory issues, but even that's debatable. They would have a hard time dressing. Okay. Elimination, someone who has Crohn's, someone who has colitis, they would go under the category of elimination. Life-sustaining therapy, someone who has diabetes or needs blood transfusions every 2 days for severe iron deficiency, or needs dialysis, they would qualify. But this is not my audience. My audience tonight would come under the category of mental functions. And the criteria for mental functions is not that you can't walk, not that you can't dress yourself because of your arthritis, right, in your fingers, and therefore I can't button my buttons properly. Your criteria is that it takes 2 to 3 times longer to manage basic daily functions. So my lovely 9-year-old Dylan, who knows how to get dressed, of course he knows how to get dressed, and his hands work perfectly. He can pull up his pants, no problem. But every morning, it takes him 25 minutes to get dressed. And you're telling him 6 times, and he's not doing it. Or he comes down and he has one sock on and one sock off. Or he's, you know, his shirt's on backwards. He's crying because he doesn't have the exact shirt he wanted that he wore for the last 4 days that you didn't have a chance to wash the night before. And I'm sure many of you, and I can't see anybody, are nodding their heads. That's the criteria for mental functions for a child with, I'm assuming in my audience, a learning disability, ADHD, mild autism, OCD, you know, accompanying disorders like a tic disorder, those, a sensory integration disorder, a speech language disorder, a communication processing disorder. Those are the type of issues that I'm speaking to. And to be frankly honest, on the side, somebody would call my company and say, you know, I'm a paraplegic. I want to apply for this. I would tell them, you should not pay me. You should not pay anyone. Your doctor should fill this out for you. But whatever doctors charge. And you do not need any help. People need assistance with this application when, and I'm saying this with all love and respect to all the wonderful families here, when the disabilities are what I like to call wishy-washy, meaning that if I see your child on the street, I think he's adorable, right? I think he's the cutest kid. And if I see him in the store having a tantrum, I'm like, Mom, get your act together. Why can't you manage him, right? Your child, I don't see anything. He's adorable. He might be very verbal. I'm only using a he because I use Dylan, but obviously the girl is the same. And that is when it's more difficult to describe the disability. And that is the challenge with the application for families and even for doctors. You know, a doctor will see a child who has severe autism, maybe with developmental delay. Obviously, they qualify. But your child that you're spending 25 minutes with in the morning for that child to get dressed, they also qualify. We're not planning on that child qualifying for life. That child will learn the skills they need to succeed, and that child will have a successful life. But that child today, at 9 years old, the 25 minutes to get dressed, that child should be eligible. Okay, so a disability is defined as any impairment that markedly restricts an individual's ability to perform at least one of the basic activities of daily living due to a condition that lasts at least 12 months. Okay, so 2-year-old, it would be very difficult to get a 2-year-old accepted for ADHD. Someone who has ADHD is born with it. Someone who has learning disabilities is born with it. But every 2-year-old looks like they have ADHD. Now, there are some kids who have some significant issues at 2. They might have a speech delay. That's typical at 2 years old. You can start looking at that. There might be some indications of sensory issues. Maybe the child is super sensitive. Maybe the child has a lot of food sensitivities. So we might at 2 be able to, but usually when it comes to ADHD and learning disabilities, 5, 6, 7 is the appropriate age that the child would be starting to present and then possibly get a diagnosis. Okay, this is what we just talked about. The basic activities of daily living in the application are all these. The most common one for the people I'm speaking to tonight are mental functions necessary for everyday life. Sometimes we'll have speaking, right? Because a communication disorder or a speaking disorder. The criteria for speaking is that the person cannot be understood even in a quiet place by a familiar person. That's a very strict criteria. But you'll see in the next slide, we talk about, cumulative effects, where let's say there's a child who has some speech issues, some behavioral issues as a result of the ADHD, we can combine 2. So that's when we might look at speaking, maybe feeding and dressing, like if the child is extremely sensory and therefore is extremely particular about his clothes. But from my experience, the government doesn't usually accept that as a criteria. So for my audience tonight, it's mental functions and possibly speaking. Those are the 2 that you would focus on. Obviously, if there are other related conditions, we would talk about it. But again, I'm on a general level. A person is considered markedly restricted if all or substantially all the time, 90% of the time, he is unable, requires an inordinate amount of time to personally manage the daily functions. Okay, so this is from the government explanation. It's what I said to you before. That now, it doesn't mean that every minute of the day I'm not getting dressed. It means that all my daily functions, right? I'm that 9-year-old who takes me 25 minutes to get dressed, and then I have a tantrum because my breakfast is not perfectly aligned on the table. And then I finally make it out the door 20 minutes late to school. I'm in school, so school is school. And the minute I come home, I'm whirling all over the house. And the parent knows they have to be fully at attention to support me when I get home. That's 90% of the time. Okay, it doesn't have to be that every minute, every single item is checked off, but that's the 90% of the time. Me as a mother, I am 90% of the time focusing on what this child needs. Whereas maybe another child, I don't have to have that same brain power. That's how I look at it, and that's how I would explain it to a parent. So when a parent looks at their child and says, you know, they have some learning disabilities, but really, I think they're fine at home, great. You're not going to get any money, but that's awesome. But if a parent says, well, I wasn't really thinking. Today I had a parent who said to me, I didn't really think that the fact that, you know, the child's late every day, you know, you're not a bad parent every single day, and that's why your child's late. The child's late every day, that would be related to this and would be the criteria. Okay, we talked about cumulative effects. Some of the mental functions issues, and again, when you look at if you want to, you could look at the application. Again, it's available on the CRA website. It's called the Disability Tax Credit. There's a checklist of questions, and you check off, you know, sometimes never often, right? So some of the criteria is very difficult to judge. For instance, hallucinations. Most of our kids with ADHD aren't having hallucinations. There's a huge gap between not being able to have judgment to select proper clothing for the weather, which is one of the criteria, to having hallucinations, right? Many 12-year-olds who might have some communication disorders or mild autism don't care if it's cold outside. I am not putting on that coat, it's itchy. But they're not having hallucinations. So some of the criteria is very difficult. You know, there's one criteria that talks about transactions. Well, 5-year-olds, I'm not expecting the 5-year-old to go to the store and make a transaction. So I'm saying never that the child, you know, never has a problem making transactions, because a 5-year-old should not be making transactions at a store. So some of the criteria is difficult to judge, which makes the application difficult. And some doctors and psychologists are frustrated by it, and I understand them. However, these are the basic issues. Oh, sorry about that. You would look at social interactions. You know, we talk about kids who are they're, you know, they're very rigid and tough socially, even though they could be sweethearts. There's just too much going on for them, or they stay on the side because they just can't handle it, right? Memory issues. Again, it could be memory that I'm, you know, 10 years old and still struggle to remember my phone number, or I don't remember all the directions you just gave me. You told me set the table, do this, this, and this. Whoa, one thing at a time. Okay. Problem solving, right? The bus dropped me off at the top of the block because the block had construction and I don't know how to get to my house. And I'm panicking. Of course, I know where my house is. Of course, I know how to get there, but I panic and I'm frozen. That's a problem in a 12-year-old. Goal setting, the same idea. I have a dentist appointment and hockey. What do I need to prepare before I go to school today? I have no idea. I have no idea. I need to prepare my hockey equipment and make sure I take my toothbrush to school to brush my teeth, so the dentist thinks I brush my teeth all the time. That's, you know, I'm 14 years old, but I still can't do that. Judgment, I think there's misspelling here. Sorry about that. Judgment, the same idea. We talked about the winter clothes, right? I don't care that it's freezing outside. Those pants are uncomfortable and I'm going to wear shorts. Or the opposite, right? I want to wear that big cozy sweatshirt because it feels good on me because I'm super sensory, even though it's super hot outside. Safety judgment, right? Of course I know that I don't want to burn the house down, but the matches look cool. Yeah, but you're 14, you should know better. And you're not a bad kid, you don't want to hurt anybody. And afterwards you're like, oh my God, what did I do? But that's judgment. Executive functions, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. I just can't get started. I just can't get going this morning. I know I wake up. I know I'm supposed to get dressed, brush my teeth, pack my lunch, go to school. Way too much for me. I'm 14. I should know how to do that. I just can't. Okay. So those are some of the questions you'll see on the application that we look at. Here's just another description: adaptive functioning, like self-care. In other words, you know, you have some kids with some sensory issues who don't realize their face is dirty, right? The 8-year-old who never realizes their face is dirty when they're eating. Okay, remember we talked about this. Okay, I guess I'm mixing up the slides and talking over the slides, but that's okay. Okay, we'll leave it here. Let's move on to provincial benefits. Yes.
Would you mind if I just ask a couple?
Absolutely. I'm just looking at the time. I'm sorry, but yes.
No, that's okay. Just curious, does the benefit vary based on diagnosis? So for say ADHD, it's something, ASD, it's something.
No, the benefit is based on your income, the benefit amount,
okay,
and the eligibility is based on meeting the criteria. That's what I said. I said it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. I mean, it matters. Of course it matters, right?
Yeah.
So you have a math disability and you're really not good at math. Really, you're fine in every other aspect of life. That's not going to pass. That's not going to go through, right? So of course the disability does matter, but that's not the only thing that matters. What matters is the effect on daily living.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Provincial benefits are a little bit different. Retraite Québec, which is responsible for some families get it every 3 months, or you can get it monthly. So I'm going to say every 3 months because that's the default, unless you once requested it every month. You get a child benefit payment from Quebec every 3 months. the income threshold is much higher than Canada, so more people might be getting it than the ones getting Canada. And again, this is an extra amount to that, okay? It's different and separate. The application is very, very different. The amount is $210 a month, and it lasts until the end of age 18. So if you get accepted today at age 5, they say that they could ask you at any time for more additional information, but I have never had a client come back to me and tell me. I've been in this business for 15 years. So it could be, it happens and the client doesn't tell me, but I've never seen it, but it could happen. Now, the application itself, you know, I'm a company, I'm sorry, I work for a company and we do not do a lot of Retraite Quebec because many people do not qualify. The application is much more detailed and intense in terms of the requirements. So it's actually easier to fill out. It's longer, it's much more detailed, which makes it easier because I know what to answer because it's much more specific and particular, right? It makes more sense when I fill it out, but you need much more supporting documentation. There's a little bit of, if you follow the advice given to you by your psychologist, so you are also having speech therapy because that's what the psychologist said, and the school is providing you with an IEP, and in the IEP, there was supposed to be an individualized class, and he's in the individualized class. So if you follow all the specialists and other directives, that's what the government is looking for. The government in Quebec, they're looking for that you are doing what is suggested, and we will give you money to help for that. It's a little bit of a type of, parenting type of attitude, but they want to see that you are following recommendations of the professionals in your child's life. And a lot of times, not that people do or don't follow, a lot of people just don't have enough documentation. So what I tell parents when they call me about, like as a company, you really, and I'm only talking about being a company to explain to you the difference. You only pay us, you pay a $25 application fee, but you only pay us if you get accepted. So what we tell people is that, number one, we won't do Quebec without Canada because so few get accepted. And number two is that we'll only look at Quebec once we see that you're eligible for Canada. And the reason is because so many people don't get accepted. For us, it would be a very losing proposition. In the end, I do work for a company. We do have to have those financials in mind. But the thing with Retraite Quebec that I tell families is try again, try again, try again. It's an application. It could take 6 months to a year to figure it to accept or deny. Try again, try again, try again. It doesn't hurt. If you feel that you do have all the documentation that's needed and you do fill out the form and you get rejected, try again. Canada's a little bit more, I can kind of tell you right away with Canada, yes, you'll be accepted, no, you don't. Quebec, like I said, I've been working 15 years in this field. I still don't have such a clear picture. The thing about Quebec is that they do give for allergies, which Canada doesn't, which is a bonus for people. So if your child is suffering with 3, and I'm making a point of this, right? With 3 non-avoidable allergies. So let's say that would be eggs, raw and cooked, dairy, and wheat. Like peanuts wouldn't count because most places don't have peanuts anymore. Fish, I'm not a fish lover. I don't eat fish. So fish is easily avoidable. But to avoid eggs, raw and cooked, wheat, and dairy, all 3 is very difficult for somebody. So, somebody has a random allergy to avocado, that wouldn't count, right? So it has to be 3 non-avoidable allergies that then you would be accepted. So that's just a point that I want to bring out here. Whereas I don't know if this is not necessarily the audience, right? I'm not speaking to the Allergy Society, but just as an aside to know that it's a good point. Okay, now.
May I just,
Yeah.
I know you're concerned about the time, just quickly.
Yeah.
With the Quebec one person is asking, they added a second tier for less severe cases? Oh,
More severe.
More severe.
More severe. So Quebec has a basic tier, $210. Okay. And that, I would love for all of you to get accepted. You should get accepted. It's really what it's meant for, but they require a ton of documentation and additional information that a lot of people just don't have. The schools don't have it, or you're not going back for a speech report every 2 years. People just don't do that. So some of it is a little bit, I don't want to say unrealistic, because I guess they can do whatever they want. Some of it, so some of the criteria is unrealistic for my audience tonight. Now, there is a second tier and a third tier for more severe disabilities. There's really one other tier, exceptional care, and that's about $1,000 a month. But you have to show that the child either needs critical care, meaning that, but for the child being at home with you, the child will be living in a hospital. So, a child who needs to be tube fed all night long, right? Or that the level of disability is so severe, a child who's 8 years old and still in diapers and severely developmentally delayed. But that is not, if somebody would call me about that, I would tell them, you do not need my help. You should be having enough help from a hospital or from a social worker to fill this out for you. It's like I said, the disabilities that I call wishy-washy, with love and respect to all of you as families, right? That, again, I would see your child in the street and think they're the cutest thing, right? Those are the disabilities that I work with. So yes, Retraite Quebec does have for a different level of care, but I'm assuming that most of you parents who are on tonight as members of this organization, that's not your child. But if it is, or if you have another child, absolutely. And again, you have to apply for the first level and get accepted, and then you apply for the second level. And I have the same advice to all these parents: apply again and again and again. There is sometimes a criteria that the child has to be 2 years old before you can apply for the exceptional care. Apply again and again. Do not hesitate. Do not stop. Apply every year, because at 2 years old, a child who's wearing diapers is pretty typical, but that child is 6 is not typical. So even though and even though the nature of the disability, like you can have a child with Down syndrome who's perfectly toilet trained at age 4. That's great. That's, I don't know that all my kids would for age 4 perfectly either. So that could be a reasonable time frame for a child, right? So every year the gap might grow, and just apply again and again. The other advice that I would give based on Quebec for parents is that they only go back 180 days retroactive. They don't go back the 10 years, but they go back from the day your file is opened, not from the day your file is accepted, whereas Canada goes back from the day your file is accepted. So there are 3 parts to the Quebec application: the parent section, the school section, if applicable, which in your case it would be, right? And the medical section. You can fill out the parent section tonight, send it in. It's just you. It's just you send it in, and then your file is open. And then you have about 6 months to get all the other stuff, to get your doctor stuff. But that 6 months, the 180 days is ticking. So that's my other piece of advice to parents. If you're applying for that, do the parent section today, and worry about the other stuff when you have a couple of minutes with nothing else to do. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about quickly is the Quebec amount for severe and prolonged impairment. So whereas by Canada, 18 years old is not a cutoff for eligibility. It's a cutoff for how money is delivered to you, but it's not a cutoff for eligibility. In Quebec, 18 is a cutoff for eligibility. So once you turn 18, no more monthly benefits, nothing. You have to apply for a different benefit, and it's just a tax credit. So it's the same idea as Canada. It's just a tax credit. The form is available online. It's actually simpler than the Canada form. You could send in the Canada form instead of the Quebec form. They accept that also, but you're not sending the form years ago. That wouldn't work. It has to be from today. So most of you who are hopefully applying today when your child's still young, when your child's 18, if the child is still eligible, you want to apply again. The difference with Quebec, and again, this is probably not the audience, but I'll just bring it up quickly. It might be, is that it's a tax credit over 18 years, okay? and it's based on your income. So again, if your income is at this level where you can only get the monthly benefit and you couldn't get the tax credit, it's going to be the same in Quebec. However, if your 22-year-old child is living with you, not because, it's cheap and they want to save money, but they're living with you because they're still struggling. And like I said, the example before, they finally got a proper diagnosis and they've been struggling for real, right? It's not just, I want to save money, mom, so I'm going to live with you. I'm in college, I'm doing okay. You could claim a caregiver. So you can claim that you're a caregiver for an aging parent or an adult child. Now, they have to be living with you. And the application says that they can't live alone. And a lot of doctors are hesitant to say that a 22-year-old, and again, I'm saying this with full love and respect, right? That a 22-year-old with ADHD and learning disabilities can't live alone. But sometimes they can't, and they do still need that support. But doctors are hesitant to say that. And that's where we see a lot of issues that doctors won't sign off on that. So the parents can't claim it, even though that is the reason why the 22 is living them. Not that they can't live alone, right? It's that they would not be properly functional if they lived alone. But a lot of doctors are hesitant. It seems like a severe question to ask. In the end, the doctor's the one who has to sign off, a doctor or a psychologist. And if the doctor or psychologist doesn't agree with that, there's nothing anybody can do. Okay. Okay, I think well, these are just some funny things if we had some time, but we are at the time. Okay, I would open up to any questions if anybody has.
Hindy, I know
Yes.
there's a couple more that have come in.
Sure.
So I'm just going to ask now because it's open forum.
Yes.
If
Yes.
those people, so if I could just say your name and then if you'd like to ask your specific question, would that work?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so Linda, you were asking a question about dyslexia dysorthographia diagnosis. Would you like to ask that?
Yeah, thank you. So the reason I'm asking is in the past, so I have my son and he's dyslexic and has dysorthographia. And in the past, I was told that I couldn't really apply for that, because it wasn't like a diagnosis like ADHD
Right.
or spectrum disorder, but yet
Right.
had the struggles and we've had to put him into some private specialty tutoring. So I did spend some of the money to help him with this issue because, he has to read every day. So I was like, why was that not potentially a
How
cover?
old is he today?
I'm sorry?
How old is he?
He's now 15.
Okay, so it's a challenge to
Okay.
convince a doctor or even a psychologist that the same, it's not like the kid leaves the learning disability in school tucked up in their history book, right? They kind of bring it home, right?
Right.
And the same learning disability that in school, my dyslexia, I have a hard time seeing words and taking in verbal information. At
Mhm.
home, I maybe have a hard time taking in directions and instructions.
Mhm.
Not a bad kid. It's not that I don't want to listen. It's that I need longer time. And with my friends, I might have more misunderstandings and my
Right.
judgment may be impaired. And especially since most learning disabilities are alerted out of school. I'm sorry, not out of school, are alerted once the child's in school, right? Because the child's in an educational system where they're struggling, that's why the learning disability is diagnosed. If you lived on a farm, you might not never notice it. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that it's not, that it doesn't affect the child at home. Now, this is a challenge with the application and
Okay.
with the medical system. If you have a doctor or a psychologist that doesn't see that, there's nothing anybody could do.
Okay.
People call me all the time. They say, don't you have doctors on staff? Obviously not. Your doctor has to know you. The doctor has to know the child. I would love to meet with all the doctors and tell them parents would love if the dyslexia stayed in school, but it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. So I share your struggle, and I can put you in touch with a whole bunch of parents with the same struggle, and doctors or psychologists, other the I should have been clear, the application could be signed for mental functions by a
Mhm.
doctor or a psychologist, psychiatrist. So that's why I keep on bringing it up, or a nurse practitioner.
Okay.
But if they are not fully aware of what a learning disability means, which is, this is a wonderful organization, and I'm sure you know how many people are not aware. Yeah, you're stuck, and I don't know what to tell you. You should be eligible, not for life, right? You don't want to be eligible for life,
No, oh, no.
right? I understand the difference between someone who's a paraplegic and my son with dyslexia. I understand that difference. But right now, he is struggling, and I'm spending time and money. I don't know. I share, and I don't know how to solve that.
But you do suggest that I should try again.
Absolutely. You should try, but you have to have a doctor who's supportive, because in the
Perfect.
end, it has to be, if the doctor's supposed to fill it in. If any parent asked me, I would say fill it in before, bring it to the doctor and discuss it with the doctor what you think, right? Because the criteria is very clear that the doctor doesn't have to see all the issues.
Right.
Sorry, Hindy, we can't hear that last
Yeah.
little, we couldn't
Oh,
hear.
okay. No, what I'm saying is that the criteria is very clear to the doctor. It's on the website, that it's not that the doctor has to see every bit of the disability, right? The doctor doesn't have to come to your house and see the child tantruming in the morning because his shirt is not clean, right? As long as it fits the general idea of a disability. But if your doctor is not aware or is not knowledgeable about learning disabilities, that'll be your challenge.
Okay. Okay. That's clear. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
I
Thank
wish you luck.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Hindy, we have 3 questions in the chat, and also Rasha has her hand up.
Sure.
Why don't we go with, I think Judy's question here was in the chat a little earlier. Rasha, please hold on. Thanks, Judy. Please go ahead.
Yes, so this segues to what you just mentioned, that it's not for life. So do we need to reapply every certain period of time?
So the government doesn't usually accept, right, my audience tonight, right? The government doesn't usually accept it for life. So when I said in these previous slide, eligible till 2029, you would have to reapply again at the end of 2029. So for 2030, yes. And again, the child would still have to meet the eligibility criteria. And I guess we would have to see if the child meets the eligibility criteria.
At that time. And the second part to that was, is there an income sort of limit? I mean, obviously we're all, doing the best we can to help our children, advance and be independent, and say they get up to an income of say 50,000. Is there a cutoff limit or anything like that where now they're like, oh, well, now you're living beyond this level of are you now you're going to get cut off from some of these benefits or these credits?
No. Let me just clarify what you're saying, make sure I understand. What you're saying is that your child, as an adult, right, is making
over
50,000
18 now,
year,
yes.
right, is making $50,000 a year, then then the child can claim the disability tax credit. It's perfect. He can claim it. Somebody in a wheelchair, there's no reason why somebody who's a paraplegic can't have a super amazing job and make a ton of money, right? There shouldn't be an income bar. I have a disability, therefore I should get the tax credit. The fact that I found my talent and I'm making a ton of money, that's not what the government is. It's not a penal system for that. This is not a welfare benefit. It's a tax credit.
Perfect. That makes sense. Thank you.
I do want to mention one more thing that I did forget to mention in the slides as well. There's something called the RDSP, which is the Registered Disability Savings Plan, that I don't usually talk about for more than a half a minute to this audience. It's a savings plan, just like an RESP, just like an RSP. When you have somebody with a disability tax credit, you can open for them a registered disability savings plan. I don't know a lot of the details. In other words, we don't do it. You have to have a financial planner or a bank, but you need to have the disability tax credit, which tells the government, oh, I'm disabled, in order then to open up that account. However, the person has to be eligible for a certain number of years before you can get the government money. I think the government contribution is like 300%, which is amazing. That's like Vegas odds, right? But like I'm looking at Emily, who's approved through 2029, which means if she's approved today in 2025, she's only eligible from today on for 5 years. She might never be able to get the money. I don't usually bring it up with this type of audience, but I do want to mention it. It does, the government will share. If it's something you want to look into for your child after you have the disability tax credit, if you go to your bank or a financial planner and they don't ask you how long is the child eligible for, find another bank or another financial planner because they don't know enough about it. It's a key point, especially with this audience who, when the child's 19, child might be doing great. Once our kids leave school, a lot of them do much better than they did in school. Okay, sorry, put that on the side.
Thanks so much, Hindy. Questions are coming in
Sure.
fast and furious. They're great.
Sure.
Sharon and then Rasha. So
Thank you.
Sharon, if you're still there. Sharon was asking, you mentioned the need for a doctor and a psychologist. What about other professionals? Or doctor or psychologist?
Yeah.
And what about other professionals? OT, nurse practitioner, anything? An OT?
So,
yeah.
I don't know if you're cutting out or I'm cutting out. Let me know if I'm cutting out. Okay. So you remember how we looked at this?
Mm-hmm.
All these criteria. So for speaking, it would be a speech therapist and a doctor. A doctor or nurse practitioner could sign for anything. After that, each of these could, so funny, I'm pointing with my finger at my screen, expecting that you know what I'm pointing to, but you don't. Okay. Each of these could also be signed by a specialist. Speaking would be a speech therapist. Hearing would be an audiologist. Walking would be a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. Elimination is really only a doctor unless there's maybe some sort of muscle issue, but it's a doctor. Feeding would be an occupational therapist or a doctor, nurse practitioner. Dressing is an occupational therapist or a doctor, nurse practitioner. So for my audience tonight, where it's mental functions and maybe speaking, it would be a doctor or nurse practitioner or psychologist or psychiatrist or a speech therapist.
Okay, thanks, Hindy. Thank you. Rasha, I don't know if I'm
Yes.
saying.
Yes, hi. So my son was diagnosed with level 1 autism as well as several learning disabilities. We have, we were able to access both the federal and the provincial credits. Yeah, it was not an easy process. That's why I put in my chat, don't give up, keep trying. And honestly,
yes.
if you have your doctor's support, it's all in the content of what you're putting in the application. It makes all the difference. And
yes.
Sometimes the child not every day is having the difficult behavior, but if you not amplify it or exaggerate it, I mean, I'm not saying to lie about it, but if it really has a huge impact on the family, then I would stress that in the application, even though it's not a recurring daily thing, So there are ways to make your application a little more favorable. And these were like little tips that my doctor gave me. And, no one had told me this at all. So I went ahead and did it on my own, got rejected twice, went for a third time. So it really, you have to keep trying, unfortunately. It's really, it sucks. It's a broken system, unfortunately, but you can end up getting it. So I just don't, I'm hoping some parents will feel a little more encouraged by that.
They should.
I have another question because I was told, so my son's going into high school next year. School is a big concern. We're looking into some private options, specialized schools, which, cost a very high amount of money. And I was told that I could claim the tuition since they're considered specialized schools as a medical expense.
Yes.
So do you have any information regarding that? Like what's needed to go about that? Like, do I just need a doctor's note? Do they issue a letter? Like, how does that work?
So you could just use a doctor's note.
Mhm.
But since your child is already recognized as having a disability by the government, you most likely won't even need that. In other
Okay.
words, if my child is in fancy private school because I want to be the best at math, I'm not going to get a tax credit for that, right? But if I'm sending my child to school because they have, like you said, level 1 autism, I should get a tax credit for that. So it's either a doctor's note, or if he's already recognized by the government, that should be enough. And kudos to
Okay.
you for trying, and kudos to your doctor for understanding that. I want to know who your doctor is and send everybody to your doctor.
Yeah, well, a lot of pediatricians are, the pediatrician was very supportive, but the specialist as well. But I think a lot of doctors are realizing that parents really need the support. So if you have an empathetic doctor, I have no doubt that you can fill it out
Yeah.
and they'll just sign it for
Yeah.
you. That's pretty much what my doctor did. He
Yeah,
said, you
I
can,
don't think
no.
doctors are bad. I think they just don't know. They just don't know.
Yes, yeah,
And so that's what I said. I suggested you exactly what you said. Good for you. Fill it out, bring it to your doctor filled out. The doctor wants to make some changes, no problem.
yeah.
But bring it filled out before. Yes.
Yeah, that makes it much easier. But the credit for, I mean, I don't know if parents are aware, but there's a few specialized schools out there because I know the public system, there aren't that many. But for, let's say, Kells Academy, Centennial Academy, those two are considered specialized schools. So the tuition fees, yes, are a hefty 22K a year. But if you claim it on it as a medical expense, I've sat down with our financial planner and it's quite a reasonable amount that you get back. So it's information that no one ever told me. I found this out on my own, so I'm sharing it here in case parents would like to consider that option. But you might want to really look into that because the 20 easily drops even with a high income, so above 100K family income, so it's really worth looking at. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
no problem.
Thanks, Rachel.
Go give yourself a bottle of wine. Not a bottle, a glass of wine. Good, good.
Yeah, we have a question here from Philippe. Philippe, would you like to share this question? I'll just run it by people here. I think it might have been resolved within the chat, but Philippe saying we just arrived from Brazil a few months ago, have a 16-year-old daughter with ADHD and autism level 1, diagnosed by a doctor in Brazil. Do we need a doctor here to authenticate? Yes, authenticate this diagnosis. And
yes, you do. Well, I'm not saying the doctor has to authenticate the diagnosis. I'm saying the doctor here has to sign the application. The doctor in Brazil can't sign the application. So if the doctor here accepts, which they should, the documentation from Brazil, when you say authenticate, I'm not sure if we're meaning the same thing. It's not that you need to do a whole other process. It's just that you need to have a doctor here who signs the application itself.
okay, Philippe, I hope that is helpful. And then our next question is from Jing. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name correctly. Would you like to ask this? If you're on board? Okay.
Hello, yes, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
I'm wondering, cause we spend a lot of money, like paying for the therapies and also for a lot of like ABAs. I'm wondering, can we get any benefits from tax filing on that, and also the babysitting and the tutor fees? So, how do we handle that kind of things?
So let's say part of our tax adjustments, and you should do the same, is making sure that you also file, not when you file your taxes, you file line 318, which is the disability tax credit for a dependent, right? Because it's your child. And then there's also the caregiver tax credit, like the child caregiver tax credit. And that's line, I'm forgetting the line now, but I will include it in my handout. I just forgot. And that's it. That's all there is. The other items, the tutoring, the ABA, it could be medical expenses, which is the same comment we had previously, right, from that we had from Masha regarding tuition. It's the same thing. A therapy could be considered a medical expense. Your child in that therapy
Sorry.
I'm saying it's a medical expense. It's not a luxury expense.
Okay, so all the money we spend is either under the medical expenses or we can claim for the caregiver expenses, right?
Yes, but the caregiver
Okay.
expense is limited, right? It's
Oh.
limited. It's a small amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Hindy. We have a question from Corinne. If you'd like to ask your question about a doctors, if you're still here, or otherwise I'll just ask. She's just saying, what if your doctor is not?
Hi, sorry, I couldn't get myself off of mute. It might be a touchy one. We're not going to name doctors, but what if the doctor is not cooperative or and just doesn't want to and also in the case where the child is close to 18, they just don't want to be, they're no longer responsible for the child, right? So what if they're not cooperative? Where can I get help to fill out these forms?
I don't know. I wish I did. I don't know. It could be a psychologist or psychiatrist. It doesn't necessarily have to be a medical doctor. So, if you have an evaluation, the evaluator might be willing to sign.
Mhm.
Sometimes an evaluator say, well, I saw the kid 10 years ago, bring the child back. I'll do a short evaluation. Right? I don't need to do the whole thing, right? Most, the IQ doesn't usually change, and it's not important anymore at age 18, right? It was important at age 9, but that is our biggest challenge for families is a doctor. I mean, it's Quebec. Finding a doctor for an ear infection is a problem.
So is there a way to fill out their part to the best of our ability to help the process out? Because
That's what I suggest to every parent.
okay.
It's online, fill it out, print it out. There is a process that it could be filled out totally online. You fill it out from your CRA account. The doctor gets a confirmation number. The doctor signs in, fills out their section. So that's like quicker, easier, and cooler, but it doesn't always get done. So I would suggest you print it and get out the old-fashioned way, bring the papers with you to the appointment, going over it with the doctor. I wish this was something we could. We hear it multiple times a day, and I don't know what to do. And I know that doctors themselves are super frustrated because that doctors have such limits in Quebec in terms of how many hours of practice and how much long. But we don't have time for this. I have doctors charge for all forms. I have a doctor now charging $300 for the form. I can't argue. If he's filling out a form, he's not seeing a patient.
Yeah.
So
that I have no issue with. I think it's just going to be difficult to get this doctor to come around. So I'm wondering if there's any way to make it as easy as possible for this particular doctor.
I would suggest you bringing it in filled in, but then I have some doctors who get upset about that. Why'd you fill this in? This is my job. I don't know what to say. I respect the doctor's time. I respect the doctor's concern about the application. A lot of doctors aren't familiar with it. They're not familiar with the criteria, but in the end, that's our only option. So I don't know. I wish I had a solution.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Cindy. So we have two more here. Daniel, please go ahead. And then we have Jasmine.
Hi. Yes, thank you for giving the presentation. I'm actually asking on behalf of my husband, so for an adult, a working adult. My question is sort of mainly about what forms we're talking about specifically. Is it the disability tax credit certificate that we're asking the doctor to fill out?
Yes.
I think, yeah. Is there any other forms? So he has a very supportive doctor that he's been seeing for 10 years. So I'm sure the doctor won't have any problem. Right. But that is the only form that he needs to fill out.
And that's the form, and you can even send that form for the Quebec benefits. Okay. Again, it's only a tax credit, so it's based on income. It is transferable between spouses. So if your income is the one that would be eligible, if his income would be eligible, either way it's fine, but it's only a non-refundable tax credit. So it is based on your income, and you could send the Canada form to Quebec even though the Quebec form is so much, the Quebec form is the old version of the Canada form. They
Okay.
never made it more complicated, so much easier. But since you can send the Canada one to Quebec, you can make your doctor just fill out one and you're done. Also,
Correct.
Quebec does not have a medical assessment team. If your
Okay.
doctor signs it, they accept it. Canada
Okay.
has a whole other medical assessment team. So like they don't have.
Sorry, Hindi. We
Yeah.
just missed that little bit. When you go to the right of your screen.
Okay, there. What I was saying is that Quebec doesn't have a medical assessment team.
Mhm.
Meaning that if your doctor signs it, Quebec accepts it.
Okay.
Whereas
And-
Canada, they have a whole other assessment team. So when your doctor signs it, they still look it over and judge it.
Okay. And just one, like, I feel like the answer is very clear, but just to be overly clear, in terms of non-refundable, so works and makes 40,000 income and pays 10,000 in tax, and at the end of the year got a $3,000 refund. You
Exactly.
would still
Oh,
get an additional 2,000 more. Like if
no.
no.
I can't say for sure. He might get $500 more.
Okay.
But usually when there's a refund, he's getting a lot of what he could already. There might be more,
Okay.
but I wouldn't know. It's when you owe that you would. So let's say you owed 5,000. You know, you're a single person. You're making $80,000 a year. The government considers you a millionaire. You need to pay $20,000 in taxes in April. You would only have to pay 18,000.
Okay. But so it's not like, so even though they've paid 10,000 taxes for the year, like
Right? No.
what you actually get at the end. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay. But
So
it's still
that's why
Right.
I can't tell you over the phone, but
Mm.
that's why it might not even be worth your while. You might want to ask your accountant, do you still have credits that could be claimed? You or your spouse, right? It's transferable between spouses.
Okay, yeah. Although his income's up and down every year. So some years it's 12,000 or 15,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, 12,000, 15,000 for sure not.
Okay.
40,000 might be on the cusp. I don't know if you file single. I don't know if you file married. Like all these factors I wouldn't know over the phone right here. But it's definitely something to discuss with your accountant, because if you can't benefit, there's really not a lot of point to doing it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
That's great, thanks. And then that kind of segues into the question that Jasmine had. I don't know, Jasmine, if you're still here. You were just asking whether the federal form can be used for both federal and provincial.
Because my doctor had said that, and I was
Just-
like, that is not how I experience the
Right.
Quebec government
So-
on a regular basis.
So just to clarify, over 18, okay, over 18 for yourself, or if your spouse would claim, you could use the same form. However, if for Quebec over 18, I want to claim the caregiver credit because I'm taking care of my old mother, or I'm taking care of my 22-year-old who still has not learned the skills he needs to be independent, and that's where I said the doctor has off that he can't live alone, then you do have to use the Quebec form.
Okay, and then under
Right.
18, you need the Quebec form.
Yeah, it's a totally different one. Remember I said
Right.
that 18 does cut, and it's called Retraite Quebec, even though the child benefits are under Retraite Quebec. I don't know. But
That's why I was a little confused about using the same form for the two. Because
yeah, it's over 18, yourself or your spouse. You could use
Okay.
the Canada form.
thank you.
That's great. So Hindi, a few people have put in the chat early on, they're just wondering how to reach you, if there's an email.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
Do I not? I'm just looking if I didn't put my email. I probably didn't. Okay, so my email is help@dfac, that's the name of the company right here, .ca. So please email me. I'd love to help you. Obviously, what we do is we do the service from beginning to end. The business, like I said, there are about 20 companies like ours in Canada. I want to say 18 of them run on the same model where, you pay a minor application fee, $25 we charge to open a file. You pay nothing until it gets accepted and until there's money in your bank. So once we file for those retroactive amounts, that's what you pay us from. You pay a commission based on the retroactive amounts. So we take care of everything. We take care of the application. We wish we could take care of creating doctors, but that we can't do. But we take care of the application. We take care of communicating with your doctor. We take care of communicating with the government if needed. Sometimes the government will come back and ask for more information. We take care of all that. We take care of the tax adjustments once it's accepted, because to get the monies for the years going back, you have to adjust your taxes. Whether it's a tax credit or a monthly benefit, your taxes have to be adjusted. We take care of that, and until your file is closed. And then we charge nothing on the future. It's only on the retroactive amounts. We could be friends for about 2 years. I have clients waiting a really long time. The government takes a long time. But in the end, you get what you're supposed to get. You get what you're entitled to get, and that's our job.
Great, thanks, Cindy. Someone's asked, what is the commission? How much is the?
Yeah, we charge 25% on all the retroactive amounts. So if you get 15,000 retroactive, we charge 25%. The 15,000 you get, I don't want to say never, but just about never comes all at once. It might come in 2 or 3 different payments, just depending on if it's monthly benefit, if it's tax credit, if it's a combination of both. So I might invoice you a few times. I might invoice you 6 months or a year, but it's never on the future amount, only on the past amounts.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cindy. And you've mentioned that you will be preparing a document, a sheet with.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, but I will. And I mean, the disability tax credit and the 2 Quebec tax credits, I'll just share the links with you. And like I said, if you could do this yourself and send me an email, say that I heard your presentation, I did it myself. Wonderful. I'll feel really good. I need to make a living, right? I need to have a job, but I'm very happy if you could figure this out on your own.
Yeah, so thank you. I will be sending that document out once Mindy sent it to me. I'll also be sending you a link for a short survey. We've had a couple of people ask whether the PowerPoint will be shared. And at this point, no, I'm sorry.
I need to really look it over and make sure that there are no spelling mistakes and typos. So
Right. So, but you've shared your email, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it for us. I just want to mention that if you'd like to become a member of the MCLD, you can do that. I'm going to pop the link in the chat. And some of the benefits of becoming a member is you will have access to the recording of the webinar. So this webinar is being recorded, and then that will be available to you. So I popped the link in the chat regarding becoming a member. Yeah, and I think that's it on my end. We've had several comments come in about how much they found this very useful, very inspiring, etc.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I just want to thank you all. This has been a wonderful opportunity to speak to people without the pressure of being a client or becoming a client, and you're all wonderful. And I just wish you lots of love and enjoyment from your children.
We would like to thank you, Hindy. Thank you for your insightful presentation tonight on obtaining government tax benefits. Your expertise and guidance on this topic were incredibly valuable and appreciated. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who joined us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hindy.
Absolutely. You made it fun.
If I made numbers fun, I did something right?
Absolutely. Thank